I absolutely love Dragon Ball. This franchise means a lot to me, and I've wanted to make videos about it pretty much ever since I found out it was possible. Y'all saw the title and thumbnail, you know what this video is about. Let's jump right into it. The bottom spot goes to the only entry on the list I would really consider bad. The opening for Dragon Ball Z's uncut English dub is like the creative representation of a headache. I'm really not a fan of the song. Even when compared to the others' 90s hard rock openings, it's not great. Essentially just being mindless screaming played over an electric guitar. The biggest issue, however, is the visuals. I don't know whose idea it was to cover the intro in this red cigarette smoke, but I can't stand it. If you grew up with this, I can understand why you'd be fond of it. But it doesn't even remotely hold a candle to some of the incredible opening sequences this series has produced. I really don't have much for this one. I mean, what is there to say about Step into the Grand Tour that hasn't been said a million times already? I'll be honest. Every complaint you've heard about this opening is true. But at the same time, isn't it a little hypocritical to crap on this one but give Rock the Dragon a free pass? Yes, it's a product of its time, and it doesn't represent GT's story or tone well, at all. But all things considered, it isn't that bad. But it's not that good either. Okay, I'll keep this one short. Everything I said in the last entry applies here, but I like the song a bit better. I get why some people love it. My dad is one of you, but I am not. Next. Okay, I want you to know that I really considered putting Dragon Ball Heroes OP one or two spots lower. I ultimately settled for number 12 because it represents its series a lot better than the bottom 3. That meaning that just like Heroes, it's generic AMV fodder. That and the catchy song are really its only saving grace, it just has no personality. This opening is the definition of mid. Here, I'm putting the instrumental opening from the DVD releases of Dragon Ball Z. It suffers from a similar issue to Heroes, with a really generic song. It does, however, get some points for using the Chala Headchala visuals, but only partially, since those are the weakest part of that opening. There are two things that put this at the top of the bottom 5 for me, though. Firstly, it switches the visuals to match We Got the Power for the Buu Saga, which, spoilers for later, are some of my favorites. The other reason? Nostalgia. What can I say? It's a powerful drug. While they weren't my introduction to the series, those DVD sets were the first way I was able to actually watch through a full section of Dragon Ball, so hearing this opening will always bring back good memories. Kicking off the top 10, the quality jump is almost unbelievable. Fight It Out is a really fun song. My only complaint for this opening is that, while the visuals work well for the Buu Saga, they do lean really heavily into spoilers, which could really hurt the experience for some first-time viewers. I don't honestly have a ton to say about this one. It's just really solid. The visuals for the last two are practically the same, so the placement entirely comes down to the song. Kuzen Zetsu Go is an absolute banger, and if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you do. I have a hard time describing why I like this opening as much as I do. The visuals aren't that interesting, basically just being a clip show from the series, and the song, while really catchy and fun, isn't anything that special. At the end of the day, I think it comes down to how well this opening captures the spirit of the original Dragon Ball. Something about it just puts a smile on my face and makes me want to go on some big adventure of my own. Maybe I'll have a better reason some other day, but for now, I just kind of feel like putting it in this spot. And I really do think it deserves its place. Here it is, one of the most recognizable anime openings of all time. I'd argue second only to the original Pokemon opening. Chala Headchala. I really can't overstate how big this song is in the Dragon Ball fandom, with it receiving several new versions across movies, specials, and games. But we aren't talking about those other versions. We're looking at the original. And what exactly do I think about the original? Well, let's just say that it being at number 7 says a lot more about the openings above it than it does itself. I know I said earlier that the visuals are the weakest part of this opening, and I do stand by that, but that isn't to say they're bad. They certainly feel a bit boring at points, but that doesn't take away from the sheer number of iconic shots in this OP. That word, iconic. It really is hands down the best descriptor I can use. This song has become a mainstay in the franchise, and for good reason. It just perfectly captures the essence of Dragon Ball, and what made so many people fall in love with the series. I could gush about this opening for a while, but we still have 6 more to get to, so let's go ahead and move on. This song is nostalgic now. Congratulations, people, we rolled. Chozetsu Dynamic had one job, to show the world that Dragon Ball was back, and it accomplished that goal perfectly. Starting off with a tasteful callback to the original opening by having the Dragon Balls fly past the sun was a great tone setter. The opening's biggest strength is the focus that it puts on the best part of Dragon Ball's world, the characters. Whether you're a new viewer seeing the show for the first time or someone who's seeing their childhood heroes on screen for the first time in decades, the opening tells you exactly who these characters are and what they've been up to since their last adventure. Then there's a standout shot of the opening that never fails to give me chills. Goku and Vegeta walking side by side towards the light, with Whis, Vados, Beerus, and Champa descending down from it. There are also some pretty great shots once we get into the hook, like Goku transforming into his god forms, the sections that change to show off the main antagonist of the arc, and of course the whole gang flying alongside Shenron before landing for a group shot. I adore this opening, and it was an incredible introduction to the modern era of Dragon Ball. Kicking off the top 5, we have the first opening of the entire franchise, Makafushigi Adventure. While it's definitely dated in terms of animation, the visuals look like they were taken straight out of a storybook, which really works for early Dragon Ball considering the heavy inspiration it took from Journey to the West. It's also worth mentioning that, while not quite as iconic, the second version of the opening did add some really impactful new shots of the Turtle Skull and King Piccolo. The song has a similar magical quality to the old dub one. There's just something mystical about it. The way it's sung, much like before, makes me feel like going on an adventure. This is an incredibly strong opening and a great way to introduce the world to this franchise. Going from the first opening to the most recent one, Ignoring Heroes, really shows how much the series has changed since those early days, going from a simple adventure to a battle royale between characters harnessing the power of gods for the fate of the multiverse. But enough about the show itself, we're here for the openings, and this one is pretty dang good. The entire opening perfectly captures the intense, action-packed, and chaotic energy of the Tournament of Power, from the visuals quickly moving from one shot to another at breakneck pace, to the song that feels like it was made specifically for a workout playlist. It might even have the best first shot of any Dragon Ball opening, immediately pulling you right into the action, and it never takes its foot off the gas from there. Even the early parts of the opening move as fast as some other openings' big action moments, and once the hook hits, I can't help but bang my head like a member of a 90s metal band. As great as this one is though, there are still 3 more that I think are better. I actually might need to defend myself a bit on this pick. Throughout the video, I've made a point to talk about how important it is for an opening to represent its respective part of a show. Taking that into consideration, it might be a bit of a surprise to see we got a power here, due to it not really showing off the story of the Buu Saga well at all. However, I put out this counterpoint. It is the perfect opening for the Saiyaman arc. Beyond that, though, it's just really good in general. The opening takes a similar approach to Chozetsu Dynamic by putting a focus on the characters, and how much they've changed over the 7 years since the Cell games. It also puts a lot of focus on Gohan, which makes sense considering he was, supposedly, the main character at this point. In fact, Goku only features in 2 whole shots, with one of them being the big group shot at the end. It doesn't just update us on the old stuff, but introduce the new story elements too. Things like Goten and Trunks, Gohan's life as a high schooler, and of course, the Great Saiyaman. It does help that I really love the song as well. This opening is great, and while it definitely had no chance of beating out the top 2, I can't think of a more deserving winner of the number 3 spot. And speaking of the top 2, in retrospect, I think one of the main reasons Step Into the Grand Tour gets so much hate is because it has to live in the shadow of this absolute masterpiece of an opening. The Dragon Ball fanbase tends to be very split when it comes to their opinions, and they will fight tooth and nail defending those opinions, knowing that the fact that Dandan Kokodo Hikare Teku is so universally beloved by both stans and haters of GT, which is in and of itself one of the most divisive things in the entire franchise, should speak volumes. The intense feelings of joy, sadness, and nostalgia that this beautiful song evokes from so many Dragon Ball fans is astounding, and the visuals that accompany it fit the tone perfectly. The thing that cements its spot at number 2 for me personally, though, is the final shot of the second version, with Baby looming over the heroes before transitioning to Goku, charging a Kamehameha while cycling through his transformations, ultimately landing on Super Saiyan 4 when he fires, ending with him standing confidently in front of a distant Earth. This opening has become truly legendary among the Dragon Ball fandom, and it deserves every bit of praise that it's received over the years. Dragon Ball is a franchise that has been a part of my life for almost as long as I can remember, and my introduction to it wasn't the show or the comics, but instead my dad's massive collection of Dragon Ball games for the PlayStation 2 and 3. I instantly fell in love with the series. My child self, and to be honest, my current teenage self, just couldn't get enough of the lightning fast martial arts, crazy transformations, and giant energy blasts. Most importantly for this video, though, I never knew those games were based on a show. That was until May 24th of 2010, when the first episode of Dragon Ball Z Kai aired in America. Now, I grew up in the early streaming era, so at this point in time, more of my TV came from Netflix rather than cable. But whenever I was on network TV, I would be on Nicktoons, hoping and praying that more Dragon Ball would air. And whenever it did, I would be greeted by what is to this day the greatest opening a series has ever had: Dragon Soul. The song grabs your attention immediately. I still stand by what I said about Limit Break having the best beginning to an opening, but this is a very close second. I also love the first group shot of all the Z Fighters flying together. The next bit, though, is where the opening goes from good to excellent. Dragon Soul plays from the beginning of Z through to the end of the Cell Saga. This part of the opening puts its focus on the two most important character dynamics in this section of the story: Goku's relationship with Gohan and his rivalry with Vegeta. The shot of Gohan jumping off the plane and landing on his father's shoulder is super wholesome, but the pair's backyard sparring session is my favorite, and even has some possible foreshadowing for Gohan's development, with Goku starting off dodging without even moving his feet, and by the end the father-son duo are sparring equally. Then of course, there's the Gorge battle shot. This showdown is a contender for the most iconic fight in the franchise, and if I'm going to be completely honest, every time I think of this fight, which is a little bit more often than I'm comfortable admitting, I picture this version of the shot and not the actual scene. From here, we see some quick, cocky smirks, telling us everything we need to know about the characters, before they charge at each other, leading perfectly into the hook of the song. Let me be clear, I do not speak with a hint of hyperbole when I say that every shot from this point on is iconic. Every single shot. The Z Fighters fighting off the Cybermen, Frieza cycling through his transformations, Goku's Kaioken aura lighting up the sky, the androids in Cell looming menacingly over the heroes, Goku fighting Cell, Beam struggling against Vegeta and going Super Saiyan against Frieza, the wide shot of Super Saiyan Gohan standing on top of the lookout that slowly gets closer and closer as the clouds part, revealing the sun shining down on him. If this doesn't give you chills, I don't know if you're really a Dragon Ball fan. Whew. Sorry, blacked out for a second. Yeah, I love this opening more than I can describe with words written into this script. Like I said before, it's my favorite intro in all of TV, and it always will be. And that seems like the end of our list. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Hyrule Historian. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna go touch grass. See ya!